This video is going to talk about problem 5 and problems like number 5. Okay, we see we have a few things. We're trying to solve this. We know we have to solve it because there's an equal sign. Whenever there's an equal sign, a lot of times that means we're going to solve. Okay, so we want to get all of our terms on the same side. The reason we want that is because we eventually want it to say equals 0. When it doesn't say equals 0, you can't use solving by factoring. Okay, so let's get it so that it says equals 0. The way we're going to do that is just by thinking about back to algebra 1. Well, if you want to get something quote unquote to the other side, that means you're going to use an inverse operation. So if this is a positive 2, we are going to subtract 2 on both sides. Okay, if this is a positive 5r, we're going to subtract 5r on both sides. Now I'm just going to do this all at the same time, right? You can do this all at the same time. We see, okay, well, what's 2 minus 2? That's going to be 0. What's 5r minus 5r? Well, that's just 0. So we already have a 0 there. Okay, so now we have 7r squared minus 2 minus 5r. We have 7r squared minus 2 minus 5r equals 0, right? We can't combine these, so we just leave it like that. What we're going to do now is just write it in standard form. So standard form just means rearranging so that the term with the highest degree is first, ending with minus 2 equals 0. Okay, so now let's go to factoring. This is hopefully by now a little bit more comfortable. What we do is label A, B, C, and what we're going to do here is multiply A and C. So when we multiply A and C, we get 7 times negative 2 is negative 14. All right, and then we just bring this B right here. And now we have to think, all right, what are two numbers that multiply to negative 14 and add to get negative 5? Well, let's start brainstorming here. Okay, negative 14, or I'll just say 14. So 14. Well, let's think 14 and 1, 7 and 2, and that's it, right? So we know one of these has to be negative. The reason one of these has to be negative is because that number is negative. Negative times a positive is a negative. So one of these has to be negative, one of them has to be a positive. All right, well, let's say, okay, how do we decide which one? It's a negative 5. So that means our bigger number has to be negative. So let's take a negative here and a negative here. Negative 14 plus 1 is not 5. Not negative 5, so that can't work. Negative 7 plus 2, well, we know that's going to work. All right, so negative 7 plus 2. All right, so those are our two numbers. Now all that tells us is how we're going to split up that middle term. So what we have, we still keep that 7r squared, but now this negative 5r squared turns into negative 7r plus 2r. And then we can keep that negative 2 right there as well. All right, so now what this is called is factoring by grouping. Whenever you have a quadratic expression or equation that can be factored, you can always use factoring by grouping. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. What we do is pretty much group the first two and then the last two terms of each expression. All right, and then what we're going to do is say, okay, we're going to take out a GCF. A GCF, or a greatest common factor, really is just what do these two terms share? What do they have in common? Well, we see they have a 7, so we can take out or factor out a 7, and then they have an r. This one has two r's, that one has an r. So let's just take out or factor out a single r. When we do that, what are we left with? All right, 7 divided by 7 is 1. R squared divided by r, you're dividing out an r, which leaves 1 r left. We now have negative 7 divided by 7. That's going to be minus 1. R divided by r. There's no more r's left over. So we have r minus 1. Okay. One way you can double check real quick is just to redistribute. And then you should get the same thing again. All right. Now let's take a look at this. So we have plus 2r and minus 2. Let's factor out 2 and 2. Well, we can take out or factor out a 2. This has an r, but the negative 2 does not. So we cannot take out or factor out an r. So we just have r minus, well, 2 divided by 2. What's 2 divided by 2? That's minus 1. Here we go. Now we see something pretty interesting. That's an r minus 1. That's an r minus 1. what you can think about is that's another factor, right? We're just factoring again. So we can take out r minus 1. When we factor out r minus 1, that's no longer there anymore. What are we left with? 7r and plus 2. So we have 7r plus 2. Okay, equals 0. And now we can do the zero product property, which all it says is we can set each factor equal to 0 and then solve. Okay, so if we add 1 here, we're going to get r equals 1. Right, and then we can subtract 2, so 7r equals negative 2, divide by 7, and then r equals negative 2 over 7. There we go. Again, one way you can double check this, just redistribute. Right here, you can redistribute this, and you should get the same exact thing as what our original problem said, or I guess right here. It should match what we get right here. All right, there you go. That's number 5.